this little video is going to be a basic introduction to radioactivity and nuclear fallout and stuff like that. And a few of the basic things that will help you in situations involving, nuclear fallout and radioactive waste, dirty bombs, anything like that. Essentially speaking, it's pretty easy to describe radioactivity if you understand how a microwave works. Now, as you know, it's basically lets off a form of very high frequency radio waves to quite a decent amount of power. Your microwave might take 1150 watts or 1200 watts or something like that, and it'll produce 750, 850 watts or thereabouts of microwave energy. And of course, the first one is what you read on the back, which is your power consumption, but then quite often actually on the front of the microwave, in some cases, they will have how many watts of microwave energy it makes. And of course it needs more electricity than it makes as it loses some of the transfer, obviously, because it's not 100% efficient. But there's one thing that I always notice about radioactivity and nuclear stuff. Holy macaroni, people are just clueless. Media, government officials, I hear some of the dumbest things that contradict easy to get information. I've heard government officials contradicting other government officials, and stuff like this. It's just, you couldn't have an area that's less understood and, with more confusion involved than anything to do with radioactive stuff. Now, back in the day when microwaves come out, some people didn't want a microwave because it would make their food radioactive. Well, there's something about radioactive waste, nuclear fallout, and stuff like that. It's your actual fallout per se is radioactive. Now, what that means is the dust in your fallout, or your little bits of dirt and whatnot that come down with your fallout, your nuclear waste in your drums, and your dirty bombs, and all that stuff, even stuff inside smoke detectors, and the old glow-in-the-dark stuff and the old alarm clocks and all that. That is material which itself lets out alpha, beta and gamma rays. Alpha rays you don't really need to worry about that much, because basically they hit your skin and that's it. They don't really even penetrate your skin. Beta waves, it can give you sort of a bit of a burn, like a sunburn sort of a thing. Gamma waves are basically up above X-rays, I think, or somewhere around there. They have machines that they have in customs here, which if you're importing something wooden or whatever, like some funny carved thing you got at a market over in Papua New Guinea, Indonesia, wherever, they will give it a blast with gamma rays to ensure that if there's any eggs of any sorts of bugs that eat wood that they don't want here or things like that, they kill them with the gamma rays. And that's the real nasty stuff. That's the stuff that will really screw you up. Now, with your radioactive material, that stuff releases radio waves. In effect, that energy that this stuff releases for a long time is what runs your nuclear power stations. But they usually use, uranium, and there is ones being developed that use thorium, which is weaker powered, but if the stuff gets out, like Fukushima style, gets out, it's nasty for about 2 weeks and then it's no big deal. But a lot of this stuff, you got a half-life, which a half-life is basically when your radioactivity released by this radioactive material will be half of what it is now, sort of thing. I.e., let's say it's beaten out a certain amount of radiogens or whatever the heck they are, and when it gets to the point where it drops to half the output that it has currently, that is your half-life. And some of these things involving nuclear stuff, and the half-life is 100 and something years. It's terrible. It just never seems to piss off and die. But thorium's very different in that way, and it's basically, barely anyone knows what it is, but the Indians are getting stuck right into developing it. They're at the forefront of all that, and it's basically, well, for lack of a better term, safe nuclear power. And some of your other stuff, obviously, uranium-235 and that, it really isn't, because the half-life is so long. Having said that, they do enrich it. There's a place in Japan. Japan commonly buys nuclear waste and enriches it, which purifies it, to get the better stuff out, and then they refeed that into their power stations. And essentially it's nuclear power almost for free, comparative to buying the direct fuel from places like Australia, who have been known to sell it to India and Russia. We have uranium in South Australia. But anyway, getting back to the point, if you ingest some of this radioactive material, that's when things are really going to go up shit creek rather fast. And you can die of radiation sickness and stuff like that in a matter of about 2 weeks. Now, you may have heard about the iodine pills. They're potassium iodine, not potassium iodate. I've got a funny feeling the iodate is actually no good, but the iodine is all right. And apparently you can improvise it by something in photography supplies or something like that. But you can just go to nukepills.com, and they have that there, and they have an explanation of the difference between the potassium iodine and the potassium iodate. But I'll tell you basically how it works. They had a thing after September 11. They were concerned about a lot of stuff, and one of the things was that they might have an airliner hit a nuclear power station. Now, most nuclear power stations are built to basically survive being hit by an airliner without a problem. They're designed that way with that sort of stuff in mind, that, some stray 747 or some September 11-like incident may occur. Therefore, they build it to take a colossal thumping. Having said that, the, whatever they call them again, A380, I don't know if any are built to withstand one of them things. I don't think so, because, well, most of them were built before that time, if not all of them were built before that time. But anyways, long story short, they try to get a bill passed to basically let people within 10 miles of a nuclear power station or something like that get potassium iodine pills. And I think it actually got knocked back, and the bloke who initially put the bill forward said, this is bullshit. It works out, if we do this en masse, it's going to be something like 15 cents per person. They're blowing all this other money on all this bullshit and foreign aid and all this other gobbledygook. I mean, they've even spent money on a study investigating the average size of duck penises. I mean, if you can spend money on that, I think you can spend a bit of money on potassium iodine pills to, possibly save the asses of people within 10 miles of a nuclear power plant. Eventually that bill obviously got passed, because it is mentioned on nukepills.com that, there's someone you can go to. I don't know if it's the Department of Homeland Security. I think it's the Department of Health and Human Services, because they've bought quite a lot of, these potassium iodine pills. And in actual fact, nukepills.com was involved in a $1.4 million transaction of a massive buy-up of these pills by the Kuwait Ministry of Health. So if there's any slanging with nukes between Israel and anyone else, well, they've got enough of these iodine pills for everybody. Now, what are these iodine pills? What's the point of them? Well, long story short, your thyroid glands tend to absorb a lot of the radioactive material that you may ingest. Breathe in, swallow, whatever. Generally swallow. But basically, some of it will pass through your body. You'll shit it out. But there'll be quite a bit of it built up in your thyroid glands. Now, your thyroid glands are supposed to be there to, I don't know if they're supposed to be there, but they tend to end up capturing a lot of nasties. And, they're almost, I don't know if nature intended it this way or God intended it this way, but it's almost like they're the sacrificial anode of hot water systems. They're the sacrificial organ if, you have something nasty. They're the ones that take it in, and they're the ones that, absorb it before it goes amok in the rest of the body, sort of thing. That's just the way it tends to be. Now, what ends up happening is you build up a lot of radioactive material inside it. The nasty part about all this stuff is it's basically inside your body. So all these gamma rays and that aren't being emitted from outside, and you can move away from them. If you've ingested it, it's in the thyroid glands, and it's actually inside your skin and, inside your body, and it makes it a hell of a lot worse. Because, you're basically carrying around radioactive material in your thyroid gland that is affecting and burning the rest of your insides with the, beta and gamma rays and alpha rays that it's releasing. Not that the alpha rays are real trouble, but, the beta and the gamma rays are. And it's one thing to have that stuff hit your skin and get, skin burns from beta rays and get a bit of exposure to gamma rays, but think about it like this. It's now inside you. How much worse is it going to be? A lot worse. So, what do? Well, they get stuck into the potassium iodide pills. This stuff builds up, and basically, the idea is you have the pills before you're exposed to the stuff. So if you hear that there's a Fukushima-style leak, you get stuck into these pills, and it does what they call flood the thyroid with the potassium iodide. And what basically happens is your thyroid is so full of potassium iodide that it doesn't have any room left to absorb the radioactive material. Therefore, by continuing to take these pills, your thyroid continues to be so flooded with potassium iodide that it can't absorb any radioactive material, and it then passes through you and you shit it out, you get it out of your body, and you may have a bit of a chance that your survival rate's going to be a lot better. But, don't expect the media to give you a straight story on all this, or the government to give you a straight story on potassium iodide pills. I'm going to talk about a few stories I've heard with that. When Fukushima occurred, a major newspaper in the capital didn't know shit from shine ore, didn't go out and seek out a nuclear physicist. I mean, we have developed it was actually the place who has those giant solar dishes up in Mildura. They were behind developing SLIR. I think it's SLIR. It's basically a new way of refining, uranium using laser beams. and that is currently the best technology in the world, to the most efficient and the most refined, uranium you can get is from the SLUR method. And, it's classified information, and I don't really know much more than what they've released to the public. But I do know who is behind it, and it's the same mob that has those big solar dishes they're playing around with up in Mildura. Anyways, we got enough nuclear brains here, nuclear physicists. But instead of ask a nuclear physicist or go to the university and search someone out who may know, no, they asked some old geezer in Romania when Chernobyl went down. And he turned around and said that the potassium iodide pill he was given, he believed gave him thyroid cancer. Holy cow, if he didn't have that damn pill, there's a chance he may have been dead in a few weeks. But now he's complaining about his thyroid cancer and blames that iodide pill on it, regardless of the fact the damn pill saved his life, but he doesn't know it. And, and this is the sort of stuff they trumpet as the truth in major media publications. Now, the fact of the matter is that thing saved his life. The fact of the matter is he got thyroid cancer. Hey, after a big nuclear incident like that, bloody everyone's going to get thyroid cancer. If that's about your best option, instead of just die of radiation sickness, it's better to just live to age 65 like he was, get thyroid cancer, have your thyroid cut out, and move on. How much are you going to need your thyroid over age 65 anyway? People with thyroid problems, and my sister is one of the people with thyroid problems, they have to really question if they can even take this potassium iodide pills. But, it's sort of used a lot in... Well, it's got to do a lot with your hormone regulation and stuff like that, but it's not just making babies and whatnot. She realised after she had her second child that there's something really wrong with her health-wise. And long story short, my father's got a bit of an autoimmune thing that attacks the pigment in his skin. My sister's got an autoimmune thing that attacks the thyroid. And it's just about burnt out. And she's on pills for the rest of her life to, keep it going, basically. But, people with real thyroid problems like that, they've really got to question if they take these pills or not, and I think they need to really confirm that there is nuclear material in the air before they go and take them, or, just try and get away from the nuclear fallout. It also has a bit to do with your temperature regulation of your body, and that's what she's had a lot of troubles with as well. So it's not just a case of, once you've had kids, that's all it's for, the hormones involving reproduction. It's also the hormones involving body temperature and all this sort of stuff. But getting a bit off track. Another funny thing, after Fukushima, there were a lot of people selling these pills all of a sudden. You wouldn't believe it. There was a US government representative who come out and said that these pills are fake and they're going to do nothing for you. Having said that, they try to get, a few $1 million worth of them after September 11 and now have them. Government agencies in the US now have them, while another government agencies claiming they're fake. These things are your cheapest and best option. For protection on top of a very basic, nuclear fallout shelter, and you'd be surprised how quick you could probably make one improvised. I have just about all the footage there is, a lot of footage involving nuclear tests and all that, back in the 1950s in the Cold War, all the civil defence stuff. I got flipping DVD after DVD on it. It's funny what you can find in the dollar store, in the, big stack of the bargain box full of DVDs. It's funny what you can find, And, there's people out there that make DVDs which are basically old military films that may be of interest to someone, and they just burn them on DVD and then sell them. And because it's public domain information, they have no copyright issues. Not that a lot of these things coming out of China really worry about copyright anyway, but whatever. Now, what else was I going to say? Oh yes, Geiger counters and all that. People are gagging for these old Geiger counters from the dark ages, and some of them aren't that accurate and whatnot. There's been one made up, I think it's nukealert.com, that is basically a little $300 thing that beeps when there's radioactivity in the air. There's been another one made up that was only available originally to like emergency services, and that's one that nukepills.com has, and they are fantastic. Credit card size, it literally just looks like a credit card because it's just a little plastic thing, and $3 each. Would you believe it? And you got to keep them out of sunlight apparently, but they say you can just keep it in your wallet with all your other credit cards. And it basically has this patch, and you've got to watch the colour of that patch and compare it to all the other colours. If you've ever used litmus paper back in the 80s or whatever for pools, or even more recently, your pH, or you maybe used it for hydroponics, or, trying to work out the pH of your soil in your backyard. I've played around with litmus paper, obviously, in high school and all that, in my teens. And basically, you dip it in the stuff and you watch, and it'll change colour, and then you compare the colour of litmus paper with all these other different colours that have got the number of the pH written under them. It's pretty much the same sort of thing, and it'll tell you the radioactivity levels, and it's got, this amount is this colour, boom, 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 and then you've got the patch that actually changes colour. And they were only available a few years ago to emergency services. I don't know if they still are, or they aren't, or, they're available to the public now, but I think they were trying to get them to the public. And if not, there's, I'm sure, there's, you might know a cop, and you know what I'm trying to say. He can probably get some for you. Or someone in the fire brigade was another option. I know people in the fire brigade here that could easily get me that sort of stuff. I know a lot of people in fire brigades, to be honest. So yeah, that is probably one of the best options, but I'll make another video on nuclear fallout shelters. There's a lot of stuff out there that you can easily find. Some of the newest stuff is written in the mid-60s. The technology has come a little bit better since. Just about 10 miles better technology that's available now to the average Joe, particularly involving lighting and stuff like that. Battery technology for if you're stuck down a fallout shelter for a while. They used to advise being down a fallout shelter for, about 2 weeks. I honestly don't trust that. I would be staying down there for about 2 months at a minimum. Yeah. I might also tell you a bit more about fallout too. When a nuke goes off, if it goes off in the stratosphere, which is about 40 k's above the Earth, theoretically, there will be a massive EMP pulse for 1/10 of a second. If that happens, you're all buggered. We're all buggered. Because, you lose electricity and fry a lot of things and yeah, things go back to the Stone Age just about, basically. Basically, they pretty much do go back to the Stone Age, almost. Now, I was going to say fallout, yes. Fallout is dust and dirt, and it's sort of like, if you know what pumice is, it's like ground up pumice. That's what it's like. The dust will be anything from, I forget what it is now. I think it's 10 or 20. I'll put an annotation over the top of this. Just hang on a second, I'll just check. Yeah, nuclear fallout is 10 nanometers to 20 micrometers, or microns, as I'm used to calling them, because sheep's wool is sort of measured in microns. Basically, if they blast it reasonably high up, you'll have a certain amount of fallout come down. Now, if they blast it close enough to the Earth, what will actually happen is it'll leave like a blast crater. But that dirt that gets blasted out of that blast crater ends up becoming radioactive, because of course it melts it, you know, and, you know, all the radioactive crap in the bomb obviously, you know, mixes in with it. But either way, if detonated close enough to the Earth, there's a blast crater, there's going to be a whole ton more fallout because of all that dirt being, you know, molten and then radioactive as well. Yeah. They also have a tendency to set fire to a lot of finer things, you know, grass, paper, worn-out curtains, things like that, when they go off. I've actually seen large-style propane tanks, like the LPG tanks they have here at service stations, you know, to fill up the likes of my car. And they used to have some huge ones, one to fill up forklifts, and other ones, most of them were for greenhouse heating at Boomerang nurseries. I've got footage of those being only sort of a quarter mile or half a mile or something like that, not very far away from a nuclear blast, and surviving fine, which has sort of surprised me quite a bit. It's part of Operation Teacup or Teapot, something like that. But I got that on one of my DVDs and whatnot. They've done a lot of strange tests, a lot of strange tests, including putting tin food in the ground and then, you know, checking that out, and you know, the ability to fade fabrics and everything crazy has been tested. And there was a whole sort of series of smaller tests that come under this Operation Teapot or whatever it was. Yeah, where they've done a lot of tests out around Nevada desert or somewhere, probably out around Area 51 way sort of thing, somewhere out there anyway. And yeah, what else was I going to say? If you are in the vicinity of a blast and you're outside, yeah, you're likely to get basically an instant sunburn. And that happened in Chernobyl with people and whatnot. And yeah, it's you literally get what looks like a suntan or whatever. It's like a sunburn, really severe sunburn, but of course it happens in the space of, you know, a second flat sort of thing. With Chernobyl, there's a bloke outside who was sunbaking for 5 minutes or whatever, and he'd come back and, you know, and he was, yeah, pretty well cooked in about 5 minutes. And I think later died from radiation poisoning, as so many did. What else was I going to say? Yes, when you're rather close to all this sort of stuff, there's actually a pressure wave. And that pressure wave, you know, burst eardrums and stuff like that. a lot of detonations, of course, have a large pressure wave, and so do nuclear detonations. But nuclear detonations, particularly, you know, the reasonable sized ones and whatnot, they have another bizarre effect, and it's actually a suction. So you have a blast, and then, you know, there'll be a pressure wave increase, and then actually a vacuum, like a suction afterwards. Yeah, to sort of, I don't know why, if it's the Earth trying to even itself back up, or, you know, like the atmosphere, the air trying to even itself back up or whatever, but it actually has a vacuum afterwards. And in some of the more serious stuff, the air ventilation system basically has giant valves, which, you know, will close and open, will slam shut when a pressure wave goes past, and then when the vacuum wave comes, they actually suck upwards, and it's like a two-stage valve system, like almost like the valves that direct the steam to either side of a steam piston. There's one that, you know, like one stem and two valves on it, and one will slam down with the pressure, and when the suction comes, the other one will slam upwards, so it's like one valve the right way up and the other one upside down, both seated, you know, depending on if it's a pressure wave or a vacuum wave sort of thing. But I'll talk about that a bit more in making a fallout shelter and whatnot. Fallout shelter, you know, there's a difference between a bomb shelter and a fallout shelter, quite a lot of difference. And a bomb shelter, you're going to have those valves that can close, you know, in a blast and stuff like that. But a fallout shelter, if you're out of the way of the blast, which in most cases you are, because the blast itself isn't very close by, but the fallout is a real pain in the butt, especially if the wind blows it. What you will have to do to make a fallout shelter, which is, you know, more than likely that's all you'd need, because there's a lot less area that's covered by the actual blast compared to what's covered by the fallout. And, you know, a fallout shelter can be made pretty damn cheaply, you know. And if you've got yourself a small backhoe or something like that, or even, you know, some old loader or whatever, you'd be surprised at, you know, what you could do with a bit of concrete and a few bits and pieces, and yeah, I'll talk about that in the next video, obviously.